The theme is the play of Shakespeare's play of Hamlet, which is a very interesting, very interesting play. It keeps coming up. Every now and again, another Hollywood actor makes a film of it. One of the last ones was what's his name? Catholic who got in trouble with the Jews. Mel Gibson, yes, Mel Gibson got in trouble, so with them. But he did a Hamlet film. Also, Kenneth Branagh did a Hamlet film, and so it's a very popular. Every young male actor wants to play the part of Hamlet, and it's not an easy part to play. It's a complicated play. The essential reason why it's complicated is that it's in between the Middle Ages and the modern age. It's an overlap of the two. So that you've got, in one play, you've got a medieval play and a modern play, both. Because Shakespeare is rocking between the two. Another great artist who worked from belonging to two epochs was Beethoven. Beethoven was born in 1770 in the old regime, the Ancien Régime, but he lived through the French Revolution when he was 19 years old, and then he lived into the 19th century until 1827, the post-revolutionary age. So he was absolutely in between the old regime and the revolution. That's what gives him his depth. He's got order from the old regime, he's got passion from the revolution. So it's a unique combination of organization and passion. Shakespeare, it's a unique combination of medieval theology and modern psychology. Middle Ages, people didn't bother with psychology. It wasn't of special interest. They understood human beings, but they always came at human nature from the point of view of God, which threw a great deal of light, and the essential structure of life came from the faith, as it does today. But there came the Protestant Reformation in England, Henry VIII, and then Elizabeth I, and the two of them were a disaster, and England lost the faith, and Shakespeare was just living at the point when England was losing the faith. And he was born in 1564, he died in 1616 when he was only 52, is that right? 64, that's 14 years, I think, no, 52, 52. He was only 52 when he died. He had a brilliant career on this as a writer of plays. He was Catholic. There's now no doubt about it. He disguised his Catholicism, and he disguised the Catholicism in his plays, because if he made too much of a show of it, he became a martyr. But he was tolerated because he had a prominent Catholic patroness who the Protestants had to leave alone, and she patronized, she protected and shielded Shakespeare. So as long as she was alive, he was all right. But as soon as she died, he had to leave London, and he went back to the countryside around Stratford-on-Avon. The last few years of his life. His last play was 1611, The Tempest. He died in 1616 because he no longer had protection in London. But while he had protection, he was tolerated because he didn't show off his Catholicism. The Catholicism is hidden in his plays. He sort of kowtowed to the Protestant regime, and therefore he got away with it, so to speak. But he hid his Catholicism, so that for many years afterwards, the Protestants and the Whigs, the liberals, were able to pretend that he wasn't Catholic. But in fact, he's Catholic. So, firstly, the story of the play, just very briefly. How many of you know the play at all? How many of you would think you know the play? that's something, yes, okay. Well, this is weakened by melancholy, the noble prince Hamlet falls when he is tempted to take revenge by the ghost of his father, who is purging foul crimes. So his father is in purgatory or in hell, whatever it is. Anyway, he's purging foul crimes, as his father is dead. His father died recently because his father was murdered by Hamlet's uncle, Claudius. And his uncle, Claudius, immediately married his mother, almost immediately married his mother, Gertrude. So his mother has married quasi-incestuously Hamlet's uncle, while Hamlet's father has been murdered. The ghost of his father appears to Hamlet and urges upon him to take revenge on his uncle. So, in Act 2, the pursuit of revenge is damaging Hamlet's soul. He's switching from love to vengeance, as his alienation from his true love, Ophelia, shows. Ophelia is a very sweet creature and is like a thermometer of what's going on inside Hamlet. And she is crushed by his cruelty to her. Society's leaders worry over the Crown Prince because he's clearly upset. Something is really upsetting him. Obviously, it's his uncle. The ghost of his uncle has appeared and told him that he is his father. I'm sorry, the ghost of his father has appeared and told him. So the uncle, who's now king, in the place of Hamlet's father, is worried about, he and Gertrude, his wife, Hamlet's mother, are worried about Hamlet because something's obviously seriously bugging him, and it shows in the way that he's treating Ophelia. In Act 3, he's organised, there are actors visiting the castle of Elsinore, and he's organising the actors to put on a play which is going to reflect the story of what happened to his father. So there will be a king who goes to sleep in the meadow, and then along comes the villain, his brother, and pours poison in his ear. It's exactly the story of Hamlet's father and his uncle. And the reason why Hamlet is organising this play is to have proof of the fact that his uncle did murder his father. Sure enough, the uncle reacts very violently to the play being put on, and therefore, for Hamlet, it's proof. But he crushes Ophelia in order to crush love and to replace vengeance with hate. After the famous speech, to be or not to be, Ophelia comes in and he's very cruel to her. And then is the play, and the play takes place, and Hamlet rejoices because it's proved that his uncle is guilty. He then has the opportunity to kill his uncle because his uncle is there actually praying. But he refuses to kill him while he's praying, because if he kills him while he's praying, he's afraid that his uncle will go to heaven. So he's going to wait until he can trap him into sin, and then he's make sure to send him to hell. The pile-up of corpses begins with the killing of Ophelia's father, Polonius, who has hidden behind a curtain while Hamlet is speaking to his mother. He is speaking daggers to his mother because he wants his mother to leave uncle alone and to no longer go on sinning with his uncle. So he's speaking very strongly to his mother, and Polonius, is the father of Ophelia, the doddering father of Ophelia, is hiding in the room where Hamlet is speaking to his mother. And at a moment he takes her by the shoulders, I forget exactly, and she cries out. Polonius lets out a noise, Hamlet whips out his sword, and that's the end of Polonius. So the pile of the corpses begins with the killing of Ophelia's well-meaning father, spying father, and is prepared by Hamlet's harshness to his mother. the pilot, of course, is prepared by Hamlet's harshness to his mother. Act 4, Hamlet is threatening the peace of the realm, and so his bitterness towards Ophelia's madness his bitterness caused Ophelia's gone mad. She loved Hamlet very much. He's turned on her because of his uncle's ghost, and she's lost her mind. Famous scene of Ophelia coming into the court and giving to everybody flowers. Ophelia's madness scene. And then Ophelia dies. Suicide, not exactly clear, but very close to suicide. The two deaths now fill her brother Laertes, the son of Polonius, with hate. Laertes has now got his father's death and his sister's death to avenge. And Hamlet has also killed 2 more servants of the king, because Hamlet was put on board a ship to England by the king with these 2 servants, Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, and when they were to arrive in England from Denmark, there was instructions to the King of England to kill Hamlet immediately. Well, it didn't quite happen that way. Hamlet found out what the 2 servants were up to. He switched the letter so that when it arrived, the 2 servants would be killed, and by chance, they're attacked by pirates on the high seas. The pirates grab hold of Hamlet and bring him back to Denmark. So Hamlet is back in Denmark, despite the effort of his uncle to deal with his madness, what looks like madness. So the king now combines with Laertes to retaliate against Hamlet. Act 5, the last act, the scene is a graveyard, another famous scene. The play is famous. Another famous scene in the graveyard where Ophelia is being buried without rites because it looks too much like she committed suicide. So she's being denied church rites. And then Laertes arrives and Hamlet arrives and they begin quarreling together. But they're pulled apart, and then the final act, in the final scene, the king sets up Laertes and Hamlet to fight a duel, planning that one of the swords for the duel will be tipped with a deadly poison. That Laertes will strike Hamlet with the poison, and that will kill Hamlet. And then, if that fails, there's a goblet of poison waiting on the side, which Hamlet, when Hamlet gets, like Coca-Cola, when he gets tired with fighting, when he needs some refreshment, he'll take the poison, and he's sure to die that way. That way, Claudius and Laertes think that they've got Hamlet where they want him. But Queen Gertrude wants to drink while the fight is beginning. Queen Gertrude wants some refreshment, so she picks up the poison and drinks, and therefore she's going to be killed. And then Laertes touches Hamlet with the poisoned sword, but they go on fighting, and then Hamlet gets the sword and touches Laertes, so the 2 of them will die. And when it begins to come out what was all behind it, Hamlet forces the king to drink the rest of the poison cup. So you've got the king dead, the queen dead, Laertes dead, Hamlet dead. So the stage is littered with corpses at the end. Now, the question is Hamlet a good guy or a bad guy? Now, I'm sure that most of you, tell me if I'm wrong, but most anybody who watches the play, or watches a film, or sees it on stage, or reads it, most everybody finishes up sympathizing with Hamlet. For instance, his good friend, his faithful friend Horatio, when Hamlet dies, "Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest." Hamlet's a good guy. And Hamlet breathes the last few words, which are noble, and breathe thy breath, language of the play is, of course, magnificent. It's Shakespeare at the height of his powers. And this is, one moment, I've got to find the end of Hamlet. As thou art a man, says Hamlet, give me the cup. Let go, by heaven I'll have it. Oh, he's going to take the cup, which is just poison the king and the queen. He's going to finish it on himself in order not to hang around, to die soon. O God, Horatio, what a wounded name. Things standing thus unknown shall live behind me. If ever thou didst hold me in thy heart, absent me from felicity a while, and in this harsh world draw thy breath in pain to tell my story. Oh, I die, Horatio, the potent poison quite o'ercrowds my spirit. I cannot live to hear this news from you, but I do prophesy that the election lights on Fortinbras. He has my dying voice. So tell him when the occurrence more or less which have solicited, the rest is silence and Hamlet dies. So most people watching the play think that Hamlet is a hero. Now, Hamlet the hero is the modern play, because you take many a Hollywood film, the hero is a rebel, and the hero is rebelling against a corrupt society, and he's taking action against the corrupt society in order to change things around and make society better. But he usually does it with violent action, and the films are so made that there's little doubt that the individual rebel is the hero, and society is the bad guy, so to speak. So, whereas in the Middle Ages, society is the good guy, and the person that rebels against it is the bad guy. Because society is Catholic, generally speaking. It's got Catholic values, it's a Catholic context, it's a Catholic tradition. Therefore, society is the good guy, and the individual rebel is the bad guy. That's also in the play. So you've got two plays. So you've got on the page with Hamlet, top left-hand corner. So the version I gave you is the medieval version. If you've got three columns. On the left-hand column, you've got the story of the play. The middle column is the medieval interpretation, and then the third column to the right is the modern interpretation. Now, look at the story of the play. It's simpler than I gave you. Hamlet kills the murderer of his father. The bare bones of the play in 5 acts. Act 1. Hamlet's father and king has been murdered by his uncle, who soon after has married his mother. Hamlet's father's ghost spurs Hamlet to take revenge. Act 2. The idea of revenge is alienating Hamlet. He's all shook up. His strangeness has upset his beloved Ophelia, and Shakespeare shows that he did really love Ophelia, really loved her, and she loved him. Being wooed by the heir to the throne, it's not nothing, so she loved him. And his strangeness seriously concerns his uncle, now king, and her father, called Polonius, the counselor of the king. Hamlet will test his uncle's guilt by a play, by organising a play. Act 3. Hamlet's bitterness crushes the gentle Ophelia. The play causes his uncle to betray his guilt. Hamlet is as delighted as he is disgusted, but refuses a chance to kill his uncle while praying. But he does kill Ophelia's father, who was spying on him, while he spoke daggers to his torn mother. His mother is torn between her conscience and Hamlet on one side, and being queen and falling for the uncle on the other side. Act 4. Hamlet's uncle posts 2 servants to get in the way, and in the meantime Ophelia has lost her reason in her distress. Her brother Laertes is furious over their father's death, and then, to top it all, over her madness. Hamlet has managed to return, and so his uncle and Laertes plot to kill Hamlet. Act 5. Hamlet tussles with Laertes over Ophelia, now dead, in the grave of Ophelia, and he agrees to his uncle's proposal to fight Laertes. In and around the fight, Hamlet and his uncle and his mother and Laertes are all killed. So that's the bare bones. Then I read again the medieval meaning. That's to say, we're looking at it from the point of view of society. We're looking at it from the point of view from the soul, Hamlet's soul. The fruits, from a medieval and theological point of view, the fruits are not good. Weakened by melancholy, the noble prince falls to the temptation when he is tempted to take revenge by the ghost of his father, purging foul crimes. It's a very important point. Act 2. The pursuit of revenge is damaging Hamlet's soul, and so as his alienation from his true love of Ophelia shows. Society's leaders worry for the common good, because the crown prince is behaving crazy. But Hamlet, without mercy, seeks a play to trap his uncle especially, and the mafia around his uncle. Act 3. Crushing Ophelia is to crush love and to call in hate. This is what's happening to Hamlet's soul. This is the medieval version of the play. It's all there in the text. And that's to be or not to be. As Hamlet traps his uncle, so hate takes over, because the play gives to Hamlet the proof he was looking for that his uncle really was guilty of murdering his father. Hamlet rejoices in evil, and so he quote-unquote spares his uncle in order to damn him, to make sure that he goes to hell, make sure he doesn't go to heaven. And the pile-up of corpses begins with the killing of Ophelia's father, who meant well, who was spying on behalf of his uncle. Listen to what Hamlet was going to say to his mother, to check the madness, to see what Hamlet is up to. And the pile-up of corpses is prepared by Hamlet's harshness to his mother. Act 4. Hamlet has threatened the peace of the realm, the common good, and his bitterness caused Ophelia's madness and then death. Those are the terrible fruits of this pursuit of vengeance. And so 2 deaths now fill her brother Laertes with hate. The death of Polonius, of Ophelia, and of Polonius, her father, the father and brother of Laertes, while Hamlet has killed 2 more sons of the king, who were prepared to tell the King of England to kill Hamlet, and instead, by his switching the instructions, undoubtedly killed Rosencrantz and Guildenstern the moment they arrived in England. And so the king and Laertes have to conspire together to retaliate. So the revenge is turning on Hamlet's head. Over the grave of Ophelia, hate flourishes. Hamlet now scorns to live. There is a providence in the fall of a sparrow. If it be not now, yet it is to come, and so on. And he scorns to die. He's pretty indifferent either way. A revenge and retaliation fill the stage with corpses. Now that's reading Hamlet as a top of the page, a killer degenerate. The ghost fills him with desire to kill, and Hamlet is degenerating through the play. He's going downhill all the way until it fills the stage with corpses. The fault lies within the individual soul on the medieval view, and you've got in the play portrayed the damage, the progressive damage to Hamlet's soul, starting most clearly with the hurt to Ophelia. She loves him, she's completely innocent, and here he is, turning on her viciously, apparently viciously. The modern meaning, regenerating hero, a new world arriving. So the next, at the top of the page, the next line down is a prince and a play torn between an old world departing, Middle Ages, and a new world arriving, the modern world. And it's the mixture of the two which causes the complication of the play. Mostly, we'll come to this, There is a pattern in Shakespeare's plays in which theology prevails. That is to say, the structure of good and evil, and of good being rewarded and of evil being punished, and the structure of society not being guilty, but it's the individual who's responsible for evil. That's the usual pattern in Shakespeare. Usual. But now the modern meaning, and the modern meaning is how most people will react when they watch, read, or listen to the play. The world is the new world arriving. The fault lies wholly in society. Sounds familiar? The individual is sacrosanct. The individual rebel is always justified. It's society which is corrupt. This is Jean-Jacques Rousseau, for instance. It's a modern doctrine. Society is no good, the individual is sacred. The world is corrupt, the avengers are here. So, something is most rotten in the state of Denmark. Different version back on. Whatever it is not Hamlet's fault. He is a hero with the ghost, together with the ghost, to seek justice. It's entirely just and proper and right since the father was murdered, it's just for the father to spur Hamlet to revenge. It's just for Hamlet to respond by seeking revenge. Act 2. Hamlet is right to be alienated, even at the price of hurting his innocent true love. She is what would be called today collateral damage. In other words, it's some evil that has to be done in order to do good. You may remember that when the United States bombed 500,000 Iran children, Madeleine Albright, Jewess, said, that's collateral damage. We think it's worth it to have killed 500,000 Iran children for what we wanted to achieve. His uncle's self-defense merely compounds his uncle's crime, while Hamlet has every right to test his guilt. So the play is a good idea, because it's going to prove that Hamlet is right in pursuing vengeance, and it's going to prove that the state of Denmark is wrong. Ophelia is another victim of society, which is proved to be wrong by Hamlet's stratagem of the play. Sure enough, his uncle did murder his father. The hero rebel has every right to be alienated. Vengeance is his. He will damn a soul to repay, and he will refrain from killing his uncle while the uncle is praying, because he wants to get vengeance. Ophelia's father was only a foolish, prating knave that was spying on the hero by listening to the conversation hidden behind the curtain while Hamlet was talking to his mother. So Apollonius got what was coming to him, and Hamlet's harshness to his mother begins to redeem her. She is all shook up by Hamlet's severity, and she would like to do what Hamlet says and behave herself, but she's a bit too weak, so she stays with Uncle. The true Act 4, the king is plotting to save his skin and his sin. Ophelia's madness is the king's fault and her father's fault. These two are also to blame for Laertes' ranting, because Laertes, when he finds out what's happened to his father and then his sister, he really blasts off. And the king only just succeeds in calming him down and getting him to agree to a way of fighting Hamlet and of killing him. By returning, Hamlet again outwits his guilty uncle. But wicked society will destroy the hero yet. That's how one feels the play. I don't see any doubt about it. Very few people in the theatre today, or watching either Kenneth Branagh or Mel Gibson, very few people will side with the society against Hamlet. Shakespeare puts the glamour is with Shakespeare, with the individual. And therefore, what is happening is that Shakespeare is stepping out of the medieval mold into the modern mold. He's not yet there. He's formed and shaped by the medieval mold, but he's on the theology, the medieval theology, but he's moving into modern psychology. Psychology is psyche, the soul. And today, psychology is replacing theology. You can only take theology seriously if you believe in God, theos. But you inevitably take man seriously because man is all that there is. There is no God, so man is everything. Therefore, psychology is everything. Study of the soul. Hamlet did love Ophelia. Neither of them was to blame. Hamlet is resigned to his fate and bears the deities no grudge. At the sacrifice of his own life, the avenging hero has at last wrought justice with the death of the uncle, the death of the queen, the death of the spy, the death of the spies to the children, etc. So there you get an overview of the two plays in one. It seems that they can't be two plays in one. It's got to be one play. Well, Shakespeare himself was so all shook up at this moment that there are two plays in one, because he's two people. Shakespeare himself is like two people in one at this moment. Okay, I have another sheet here, so would you like to distribute this one? Not the other side of the one you got, but this one is in colour. Modernity, insoluble problem, question mark. That's one side of the two sides. So have a look at modernity, insoluble problem. Hamlet is a fascinating play. It fascinates people, it fascinates the literary critics. What's Hamlet's problem? Well, if you look at the play from a Catholic point of view, the problem of Hamlet is the apostasy of England. Hamlet is Shakespeare himself, completely unhorsed, losing his grip, losing his medieval vision, out of anger and fury and frustration at the falling away of England, the final decision of England to fall away from the faith, which is a terrible decision, and it was a decision made by England. Very soon after, around Shakespeare's death, the Puritans had come into power. And Henry martyred Catholics, Elizabeth martyred Catholics, and the Puritans would go on martyring Catholics. Out of the Puritans will emerge a compromise, the Stuarts, Charles I, King Charles I, and the compromise will be the Anglicanism. But Shakespeare picks up that the Puritans are on their way, and he mocks them in Twelfth Night. A Malvolio in the 12th night. What shall there be no cakes because thou art virtuous? One sentence snack of Puritans. So England is in dead trouble. It's ratting on God, big time. And actually, Hamlet, I think, was 1604. Not everybody agrees on the date of Hamlet. But 1605 was the Gunpowder Plot. And 1601, or was it 1603, the death of Elizabeth I. 1603, I think. Yeah. 1603, Elizabeth I dies. And the Catholics, who've been very oppressed by they have a breath of hope that James is going to change the policy. That James VI of Scotland, James I of England, is the founder of the Stuart regime, the Stuart monarchy. The Catholics are hoping that James is going to turn things around. It's soon clear that James is not turning things around, and that's why the Catholics just brimmed over. They couldn't stand it any longer, and the Gunpowder Plot was the result. The Gunpowder Plot, it looks like just happened today, politics is no different. It looks as though it was a trap set by the Protestants to corner, to trap the Catholics into reacting. And then the Protestants will pretend all innocent. Look at them, they were wanting to blow up Parliament. They're wicked. And so the Protestants used that to poison public opinion in England against Catholicism until the early 19th century. In the early 19th century, St. Dominic Barbarian comes from Italy to preach the faith in rotten England, which has been rotten for so long. And he suffers a great deal. Dominic Barbarian, who died on Reading Station. You don't seem to know where exactly. He died on Reading Station. I don't know how many years he had in England, it wasn't all that many, and he suffered a lot because of the still heavy anti-Catholic prejudice all over England. And he converted John Henry Newman. And he was considerably responsible for the Second Spring, as it's called, the renewal of the Catholic faith in England. England, as Donoso Porto said, did not come back to the faith, but it did get a good breath, a solid breath of Catholicism. There was a revival of Catholicism, which never became the majority of England, but it became a substantial and important minority. But from 1605 through to 1805 at the earliest, for 200 years, for 2 centuries, England was locked into anti-Catholicism by the Gunpowder Plot, so to speak. The Gunpowder Plot came from, I think, Guy Fawkes from Warwickshire. It's very possible that Shakespeare knew the Gunpowder Plotters. The Gunpowder Plotters, the English Catholics, through the 16th century, had been all asking, the Jesuits came over from the continent to defend the faith against the English Protestants. And a number of the Jesuits gave their lives, and they were a new generation of priests, a little like St. Pius X in its heyday. A new generation of priests serving the old faith. And the English Catholics were asking the Jesuits and asking the priests, can we react? Can we rise up against the rotten Protestant regime, or the Protestant regime? Can we? And there's no clear answer in the history books as to what the priests said to them. But opinion was divided. Finally, the Catholics this group of Catholics can't contain themselves any longer. The bitterness and the anger is so great that they rise up and they fall straight into the trap of the Protestants, and the result is 2 centuries of public opinion absolutely against Catholics. Okay, now, modernity, insoluble problem. What you've got is exactly the same problem of Hamlet, of Shakespeare, and of youngsters, rock and roll youngsters under Pink Floyd. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's not this time acts. It's five different sections. Hamlet is Prince of Denmark, and he's the rightful heir to the throne of Denmark. Shakespeare is Catholic, and he's the rightful heir to a Catholic England. Damn it all. My ancestors were Catholic. Catholicism is true. England was Catholic. England ought still to be Catholic. It's ratted out. England has deprived me of my rightful heritage. Pink Floyd, e.g. Pink Floyd is just an example. He's way out of date now, of course. I don't know what was in date. Pink Floyd was what, the 1980s? Somewhere around those, 1970s maybe. We don't want no education to teach us leave our kids alone. And so on and so on. That's it. We don't want no education. Your system is rotten and it's lousy. You teachers are refusing to teach us anything about God. You are forbidden to teach us about God. We don't know God, so we don't know what you're depriving us of. All we know is we're living in a very deprived society. We youngsters are today very deprived. Doing, we're deprived. You're a rat, you're all rats. Doing. They make good money doing, so they're not unhappy screaming and protesting and yelling. So they go on screaming and protesting and yelling, and then at a given point, they have so much money to invest that they go to the city and they put on dark suits and they become businessmen and they join the system. And there's a spark of rebellion dies in the youngsters And with them, with that spark of rebellion, dies something precious in the youngsters. The youngsters are no longer wanting to scream against the society because they're reconciled to it. It's rotten and they're going to be rotten with it. We'll marry a ticky-tacky wife. We will have a little ticky-tacky suburban house. We will have 2 ticky-tacky little children. And we will go to our ticky-tacky grave. And we'll forget about being rebels because, you know, we have to mature. Now we've got children. Our children are going to be rebels. The system is going to go on. The system is established. It's fixed. It's no good. What can you do about it? So any young man since the Incarnation is the rightful heir to Christendom. Since the Incarnation. Now, 2. Now, Hamlet's uncle Claudius has murdered Hamlet's father. He's incestuously married his mother. He's usurped the throne of Denmark. And he's corrupted Denmark. Denmark, as Shakespeare shows at various points, is now partying all the time. It's just, but the morals are rotting in Denmark because of the uncle. And so, similarly, for Shakespeare, the Protestants have murdered Catholic England, made it commit incest with heresy, with Protestantism, hijacked the English people, and corrupted England in depth. Today's modern rot of England goes back to the arrival of Protestantism in England, and the stamping out, the ruthless stamping out of the Catholic faith. Nowhere in Europe was the faith stamped out like it was in England. Because in Germany, somebody who was Catholic in a Protestant, in a part of the country that went German, Protestant, could always emigrate to a Catholic part of Germany. A Protestant could always emigrate from a Catholic prince to a Protestant part of Germany. So for the Germans, it was always a let-up. England's an island. England was a nation rotting individually, particularly, like no other nation on the face of the earth. And therefore, England led, in this respect, England led the apostasy of the modern world. And therefore, Shakespeare was one of the first up against the fullness of the problem in England at the time of the Gunpowder Plot. The Protestants have murdered Catholic England. They have made England commit incest with heresy. They've hijacked the English people, and they've corrupted England in depth. Exactly parallel. For the youngster, the rock and rolling youngster, the modern world has virtually extinguished Christianity, incested Christianity, committed incest of Christianity with secular humanism, hijacked virtually all the nations, and corrupted in depth all of mankind. Obviously, those are sweeping generalizations, but broadly that's the picture for modern youth more and more in what were the Catholic countries. Rock and roll never bit so soon, so deep as in England and the United States, but it bit finally in Italy, Spain, and the once Catholic countries. You had the U2 in Ireland and so on. 3. The result is that Hamlet is an exile in his home, and that's very clearly portrayed with the first speech of Hamlet. Oh, that this duty of solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew, or that the mighty had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter. His world has crumbled. He was the heir to the throne, beloved son of the king. His world has completely crumbled. His mother has betrayed, his uncle is a murderer, he is essentially isolated, he contemplates suicide. And that's Hamlet at the beginning of the play. Oh, that this too solid flesh would thaw, melt, and resolve itself into a dew, or that the Almighty had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter, or if only God had forbidden suicide. William Shakespeare is a stranger in his own land, now filled and directed by Protestants. Catholic England has collapsed. Most English people are going with the flow, in other words, allowing themselves to become Protestants. Close to despair, Shakespeare writes Hamlet. And that's the point. Shakespeare is losing his cool. In this series of Shakespeare's plays, he's been largely faithful to the medieval schema up till now. Hamlet is the first, and to the same extent the only play in which he really loses his cool. He really doubts the medieval schema. And that shows by the way in which the sympathy with which he portrays Hamlet the rebel. Shows that Shakespeare's sympathies certainly look to be on the side of the rebel. He still writes a medieval play, the play in which Hamlet ruins his own soul by pursuing vengeance instead of love. That's there. We'll come to it in a moment. Ophelia has a tremendous comment on Hamlet, a famous speech. Let me find it. I have it here. Here we are. So Hamlet is very bitter towards Ophelia. God had given you one face and you make yourselves another. You cheat, you amble and you lisp, and nickname God's creatures and make your wantonness your ignorance. Go, I know not. It hath made me mad. I say, we will have no more marriages. Those that are married already, all but one, shall live. The rest will keep as they are. To another, go. Go and become a sister. No question of marriage. Forget marriage. Ooh, tell that sweetheart. Oh, she reacts. Oh, what a noble mind is hero throne. The courtiers, soldiers, scholars, eye, tongue, sword. The expectancy and rose of the fair state. The glass of fashion and the mold of form. The observer of all observers, quite down. And I of ladies most dejected and wretched, that suck the honey of his music vows, now see that noble and most sovereign reason, like sweet bells jangled, out of tune and harsh. That unmatched form and feature of blown youth, blasted with ecstasy. Oh, woe is me, to have seen what I have seen, see what I see. That's the desolateness of poor Ophelia. The next we see of her, she's lost her mind. And then we see she's committing suicide. So that's what's happened. On the medieval plan, that's what's happened to Hamlet. And it's very clear. And yet he did love her. He really did love her. And she says so. But here is the moment when she's telling her father, like a dutiful girl, that she's been wooed by Hamlet. And she describes how Hamlet took his leave of her. He took me by the wrist, she's talking to her dad, Polonius. He took me by the wrist and held me hard. Then goes he to the length of all his arm, and with his other hand thus o'er his brow, he falls to such perusal of my face as he would draw it. Long stayed he so. At last, a little shaking of mine arm, and thrice his head thus waving up and down, he raised a sigh so piteous and profound that it did seem to shatter all his bulk and end his being. That done, he lets me go, and with his head over his shoulder turned, he seemed to find his way without his eyes, for out of doors he went without their help, and to the last spended their light on me. That's Hamlet saying goodbye to love, which for Shakespeare is deadly. You can't say goodbye to love and not pay serious consequences. Here, for instance, is Othello. How many of you know the story of Othello? The black man who is a general of the whites and a very successful general for Venice, and he marries a white girl who he loves very dearly, and then he's poisoned by a villain, Iago, against his wife, Desdemona. Iago makes Othello think that Othello's wife is unfaithful. He kills her. He smothers her with a pillow on her. And that's the end of his wife. And then he realizes what he's done. And then he realizes what Iago did. But again, there's a key moment when the poison of Iago is working on Othello. And here is what Othello says. One moment. Oh, blood, blood, blood. Now, a moment. Patience, I say, Iago, pretending to be on Othello's side. I say, your mind perhaps may change. Never, Iago. Like to the Pontic sea, whose icy current and compulsive course ne'er feels retiring end, that keeps you on to the Propontic and the Hellespont. Even so, my bloody thoughts, with violent pace, shall overtake, shall ne'er look back, ne'er enter humble love, till that a capable and wide revenge swallow them up. Now, by yon marble heaven, in due reverence of a sacred vow, I here engage my words. Was it the son? I'm sorry, I seem to have lost the right speech. Because but it's very clear. Here it is, yes, here it is. Oh, that the slave had 40,000 lives. One is too poor, too weak for my revenge. Now do I see it is true. Iago has persuaded him with false evidence that Desdemona is guilty. Now do I see it true. Look here, Iago, all my fond love, thus do I blow to heaven. 'Tis gone. Arise, black vengeance from the hollow hell. Yield up, O love, thy crown and hearted throne to tyrannous love. Swell bosom with thy throat, for 'tis of aspects tongues. Iago, yet be content. Quack, take it easy. Oh, blood, 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 says Iago. Othello. Tremendous acting stuff. Patience, I say, your mind perhaps may change. Never, Iago. You see the black man's nature. The black, he loved his woman very dearly. But if the Iago has succeeded in twisting him, and now it's all turned from love to vengeance. And it's a pile of vengeance in a violent, savage black breast. But exactly the same thing. When a heart yields up to hate instead of love, it's in dead trouble. And that happens in Hamlet, and that's part of the medieval play. It's very clear in the play. How do the modern critics get over that? How do they still make Hamlet a good guy? Well, they say she's a silly girl, there's nothing to her, and there's nothing to her, it's not all that significant. No, it is significant. It is significant. Very significant. So, where were we? I sidetracked on two speeches. We'll come to one or two more. It's always the same. The world, the medieval world, has an order. In modern psychology, all the good guys are bad and all the bad guys are also good. There's no clear black and white. Modern world. Everybody is equal. Everybody is mush. Everybody is a psychic case. But in the medieval world, you've got villains and you've got good guys. The good guys have faults. The bad guys have redeeming virtues. But you can still see broadly on which side somebody is. There is a moral order. That's the theology. And according to that moral order, the symptoms are clear of Hamlet going bad, according to that moral order. And yet the effect is always of the hero rising up to take revenge on a no-good society. So, Shakespeare is a stranger in his own land. Catholic England's collapsed. Most English people are going in the flood. Close to despair, he writes Hamlet. Yes, it was a moment of despair for Shakespeare. Afterwards, Macbeth, Othello, King Lear, the next three great tragedies, the moral order is clear once again. There's no return like in Hamlet to the modern mentality. Hamlet is the father of Hollywood, you could say in a way. The literature has come forward with one anti-hero after another, with one antisocial hero after another. In the Middle Ages, an antisocial hero wouldn't make much sense. We come to Pink Floyd, the young man is surrounded by hollow men. The young man is surrounded by hollow men. Your businessmen. Your politicians in Westminster, your pollies, as they call them in Australia, the pollies. The pollies in Westminster, they're miserable characters. Look what there's no man in England to stand up for England. Boris Johnson with his mop of wild yellow hair. Whoa, what a poor character. Rees-Mogg is a decent fellow. Is there any weight to him? Remains to be seen. So he's a decent man. He's a gentleman, that one said. But is he a leader? Has he got it to lead? There's nobody to lead. We're relying on a poor woman who's absolutely not anywhere up to the demands of the position. This is the best that England could do, which a few years ago ran a worldwide empire, and now it can't make up its own mind what to do with Europe. And nobody's got any vision of what England represents or should represent. They're hollow men. They're insignificant. Who can respect these men today? I know some women that say that there are no men to marry. The men are not men. The world is secularized, unlivable. Mark, you can't pretend that the youngsters have got no fault today. It's not as though the youngsters, the rock and rollers are faultless, far from it. But nevertheless, when they protest against modern society, when they protest against modern men, it's not big men, they've got a bond. Everybody seems to be going along in the modern world. You try rebelling, and immediately you've got a psychological problem. And you've got to be shown, taken to the psychiatrist, where you're going to have your problem sorted out. It's not our problem. Our modern society is wonderful. You've got a psychological problem. You're my own dear daughter, but you've got the problem, not me. The daughter is instinctively, there's something wrong with mum. I don't know what it is. I've got no idea what it is, but there's, no, you've got the problem, says mum. Takes her to the psychiatrist to prove it. The psychiatrist talks nonsense to the poor girl. So she's more twisted up than ever. He turns to drugs, to promiscuity, etc., etc., etc. Shakespeare writes Hamlet, and Hamlet can commit suicide. So, finally, Hamlet takes arms. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether to take arms against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep, no more, and by a sleep to say the end, the heart of the thousand natural shocks and pleasures entering, 'tis a consummation devoutly to be wished. To die, to sleep, perchance to dream. Aye, there's the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we shuffle off this mortal coil, must give us wars. And so, since we don't know what's in death, then the thought of after death, which we don't know, the undiscovered country from whose born, the traveller returns, puzzles the world, and makes us rather bear those ills we have than fly to others that we know not of. So, Hamlet takes arms, he lashes out. He lashes out at Polonius, he lashes out at Laertes, he lashes out at Mum, and so on and so on. His society, of course, defends itself. The result is a bloodbath, and 14 brass who was nothing inherits everything. And then the death of the prince. Catholics close to William Shakespeare, those are the gunpowder plotters, lash out. The Protestants trap the men, they trap them in the gunpowder plot. For centuries, Catholics will be oppressed. Their last state is arguably worse than their first, and it's the deadness of England. Ever since Catholicism, ever since the faith was stamped out in England, England's been dead, in a way. Especially today in the modern world. Modern England is dead. Terrible. Father Angus would say that modern Spain, Catholic Spain is dead. Anybody today who loves their country, all the countries are dead. It's extraordinary. Shakespeare lashes out, the process traveled gunpowder plot and so on. The young rock and roller, he bashes the policeman, or he sings rock, or he spits in the psychiatrist's face, but he is psychiatrized or millionairized. In other words, he's fobbed off, either he's bought off. The rebellious young youngster is either bought off, he's paid off, or he's psychiatrized off. Terrible story, which you may have heard. The young man, the adolescent, who's still wetting his bed. So the mum and dad send him to the local doctor. No result. So they send him to the local hospital. No result. He continues his habit. His misfortune continues. Send him to the police. No result. Send him to the psychiatrist. And he comes back all wreathed in smiles. Ah, dear child. Have things changed? No, says the young man, but now I'm quite happy about it. That's psychiatry for you. Absolutely. So the poor rock and roller is psychiatrist or millionairized. Either way, he is secondly humanized. He's made to go with the flow, and he decides at even point to give up rebelling and to go for a nice and ticky-tacky house, a nice and ticky-tacky wife, a nice and ticky-tacky life, with a nice and ticky-tacky insurance policy. Oh, you know the game. His last stage is worse than his first, the deadness of young men today. They've given up. The spark has gone out. The spark is valueless while it lasts. Well, it's not completely valueless. Oh, you can see. This is why Hamlet is so relevant always. He's hitting on, the play hits on a nerve. It's hitting on the apostasy of the modern world. And it's showing the modernity, insoluble problem. And what you got at the bottom, the death of the prince, the deadness of England, the deadness of young men, to be or not to be, to rise up against a sea of troubles and by opposing end them, or to submit, to let it go. So the problem is this, it's all in the bottom in red. If I react, I get crushed. If I do not react, the world goes on its wretched way, and I do nothing about it. Either way, the modern world, there's nothing I can do about the modern world. Why is the problem insoluble? How and where is the problem insoluble? It can't be insoluble, but it is. Because how does a young man today make a life? He's either going to join the system or he's going to fight against it. He's going to fight against the system. He'll be maybe a hippie all his days. He'll be revolting, but he will be revolting. Since he doesn't know what revolt is revolting. He doesn't wash, he doesn't, he's just a hippie. But he's revolting. But what does he achieve? He doesn't marry, he doesn't have children, he doesn't do anything with his life. He wastes his life, he goes to university, becomes a perpetual student. What do young men do who rise up against the system today? The system has no place for them. They're despised, they're rejected, their lives are insignificant. Or they join the system, and in that case, they lose their souls. Because the system is soulless, the system is valueless, the system is purposeless. What am I living for? To build a nice swimming pool in my backyard? Is that what life is about, swimming pools? So it's either hippie or swimming pools. Both. Either way, there's no solution. So the problem is insoluble. The problem for the duration of Hamlet was insoluble for Shakespeare. He had no solution. And the problem for Hamlet is bloodlust. So, why is the problem solution? Well, turn over the coloured page. Now this is an overview of a number of Shakespeare plays. And it's taken from what it was here is by John Vivian. The Shakespearean Ethic by John Vivian. This is the book that opened up Shakespeare for me. I read Shakespeare quite a lot at school. It was just a kind of a very elegant, very well, brilliantly written jumble. I couldn't make any sense of it. Well, this book, it makes sense because he pulls out the medieval order behind the semi-modern jumble appearance. So you've got this author analyzes a tragic process in 9 steps, which you got from top to bottom here. Firstly, there's a portrait of a noble but flawed soul. Secondly, a tempter is characterized as being evil. That would be Hamlet's ghost. The first temptation is yielded to. Hamlet comes off the battlements, resolved to, after the first meeting with the ghost, he's resolved to to avenge his murdered father. There's an inner conflict in the hero, and this gives rise to the famous soliloquies in Shakespeare. Solus loquo, speaking alone. The character stands alone on stage, and he utters his thoughts to the audience in the theatre, but usually not to anybody else on the stage. It's a soliloquy. And you can see the psychology of Shakespeare's soliloquies is marvellous. The analysis of the characters is marvellous. The nobility gives way. The tragic hero gives way to the temptation. There's a second temptation and a second conflict. And the kingship of the soul is lost. Love is what makes the world go round. Not hate. Hate stops the world going round. So the kingship, it's a love which should be king of the soul. But the tragic hero in Shakespeare loses love and loses the kingship of his soul. There is then, after the second temptation, a tragic act, and then a realization of horror. The tragic hero realizes what he's done, and then there's death. Now, you've got this pattern followed in Caesar, Macbeth, Othello, and Hamlet. But then in Measure for Measure and The Tempest, you've got the process interrupted. The same process is at work. A process which would end in tragedy and death. But thanks to the Duke of Vienna in Measure for Measure, thanks to Prospero in The Tempest, the process is interrupted with a merciful wise man who makes mercy interrupt, and the tragic machine no longer rolls, death is avoided, and in Measure for Measure you get no less than 3 marriages fixed up to organize all the characters floating loose. So, Julius Caesar, which is a play that's probably it's a very popular play, and not too complicated. Julius Caesar is the tragedy of Brutus. Julius Caesar is not really the central character. The central character is Brutus, the chief conspirator. Brutus is super concerned with honor and with politics. And for him, politics is going to override humanity. Cassius is the tempter, his comrade Cassius. Caesar, you may remember, says to him, he is a lean and hungry man. Let me have fat men around me. I don't want lean and hungry men about me. They're always apt for conspiracy. Caesar's got Cassius sized up, and that's what Cassius is. And Cassius spurs Brutus on to the assassination of Caesar. First temptation, Brutus and Cassius dialogue, and Cassius tempts Brutus. Brutus concludes it must be by his death. Brutus is persuaded by Cassius, and his humanity gives way to his politics. He's got to die for the good of Rome. Then a second temptation is when Brutus is in his garden and letters get thrown over the wall by the other conspirators, because the other conspirators need the honorableness and the example of Brutus, the virtue of Brutus, to cover over their criminal intent of getting rid of Caesar. They need Brutus to join the conspiracy to give it some credit. And Brutus then makes a famous speech, a brief speech. Let me find it because it's very significant. I have it here somewhere. This would be Macbeth. This would be Caesar. Brutus says, "Since Cassius first did spur me against Caesar, I have not slept." That's a bad sign. Hasn't slept. Between the acting of a dreadful thing and the first emotion, all the interim is like a phantasma or a hideous dream. The genius and the mortal instruments are then in council, and the state of man, like to a little kingdom, suffers then the nature of an insurrection. Brutus is it's a soliloquy. Brutus is very clear what's going on himself. There's a revolt going on in his soul. Cassius is spurring him on to assassinate Caesar. And Brutus is in internal upheaval. Something's wrong. Re-enter Lucius, and then there's a beautiful scene, again, with the equivalent of Ophelia. It's a woman, it's his wife, Portia. And she says, "Brutus, my lord, Portia, what mean you? Wherefore, rise you now? Why are you getting up here in the middle of the night? It is not for your health thus to commit your weak condition to the raw cold morning. Not for you, nor for you either," says Portia. "You've ungently, Brutus, stole from my bed, and yesternight at supper you suddenly arose and walked around." It's a beautiful scene. She tries to get out. She doesn't know what he's up to. She doesn't know that Brutus is planning an assassination. But with her womanly instinct, she knows something is wrong. "Brutus, what's wrong? Tell me, I'm your wife. I'm not your prostitute, I'm your wife." "Ah, I don't deserve such a wife," says Brutus, but he doesn't tell her. Because he doesn't, if he'd only told her, she could have very possibly persuaded him not to go through with it. But he doesn't tell her, and therefore she's kept out. And she's not trampled on like Ophelia, but she is kept out, and therefore she's powerless to help him. Therefore the plot rolls on. The state of man is in a state of insurrection. When a man is plotting something bad, or what does it say? Between the acting of a dreadful thing and the first motion, everything in between is like a phantasm or a hideous dream. The genius and the mortal instruments are then in council, and the state of man, like to a little kingdom, is suffering revolt. So, for Shakespeare and for the Middle Ages, there's an order in the soul and there's an order in the world. And if the soul is in disorder, it's going to create disorder in the world. And if the soul is in order, it will create order in the world. Out of the individual soul comes the condition of the world. So, contemplating a dreadful thing, it's like a revolt going on inside the world, a revolt against order going on inside the soul. That's a significant quote from Julius Caesar. Then the act of darkness is the assassination of Caesar. The realization of horror is at the Battle of Philippi, when the ghost of Caesar appears. I think it's Act 5. No, it's Act 3 days already. And then Act 5, at the Battle of Philippi, Brutus dies. Macbeth. How many of you know the play of Macbeth? That's a very popular play. Yes, some of you know. Macbeth is a general, a very capable general, a very warlike general, but he's ambitious. That's his flaw. The witches are the temptresses. Fair is foul and foul is fair. Disorder. Good is bad and bad is good. What? Confusion. Disorder. And they're going to tempt Macbeth. And he's going to react just like Brutus. The witches. Macbeth, the temptation. Thou shalt be king. Macbeth, that shalt be king. The temptation is ambition. And Macbeth, just like Brutus, nothing is but what is not. Okay, confusion. Nothing is but what is not. Things are not what they are. Instead of things being what they are, good being good, evil being evil, there's an order in the universe. Things are what they are, they're not what they're not. Macbeth, things are not what they are. That's the confusion taking over his soul. Nothing is but what is not. Second temptation is Lady Macbeth. Never shall sun that morrow see she's spurring him on to murder Duncan. It's a horrible crime because Duncan is his relative, is his king, and is his host. And in killing Duncan in his own castle, Macbeth is killing his relative, his cousin, his king, and his guest. It's very great. But Lady Macbeth is, think of Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton is exactly Lady Macbeth, exactly. She's a terrible woman. Never shall sunlight tomorrow see. But the moral order comes out of Lady Macbeth. She bottles it all up, of course. She's defending her husband, she's not wanting to betray him, but she sleepwalks. She sleepwalks at night. And the doctor that observes sees her just rubbing her hands. Out, down, spot. She's trying to get the blood off her hands. She can't do it. And the doctor says, were I away and clear from Dunsinane, wild horses would not draw me here again. So the doctor's thoroughly upset. What he sees, it doesn't look good. The queen at night sleepwalking, rubbing her hands out, down, spot. What will all the multitude of the seas uncounted not watch out, and so on and so on. And then Macbeth, if it were done, when 'twere done, is this a dagger that I see toward my hand? It's handled toward my hand. Is this a dagger that I see before me? It's handled toward my hand. Another famous soliloquy of Macbeth, the prospect of murder, and a second time he falls, and therefore he murders Duncan. 7, 8. To know my deed, 'twere best not know myself. Macbeth realizes what he's done, and his life is now is worthless. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day, and all our yesterdays are lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, brief candle. Life has no more purpose. He'll throw it away. And he dies like Dunsinane. Othello is a warrior, a great general for Venice. But he's passionate, strong passions. Black man. Watch black boxes when they get going. Iago is the tempter. I am not what I am. Again, confusion. Again, the blurring of order, the denial of order. Order is that which is, that which is not, that which is not, is not. That which is not is. So on, so on. That's order. No, what is not. I am not what I am. The blurring of identity, he's a villain. What is his motivation? Interesting. It's he can't bear the beauty and order in Othello's life, as Othello has this lovely wife who loves him and he loves her. This villain can't stand that. So he works to undo Othello and to get Othello jealous. He succeeds in doing it, and then Othello murders his wife, murders Desdemona. Yield up, O love, thy crown to tyrannous heat. You've seen that, that's typical. Same thing. The soul is in order, and then it's in disorder. Here it is. The revelation of the first 10 verses puts us in a position to profit. What is to come is already shaped in outline. A nature whose native inclination is to light has sworn itself to darkness. A tremendous spiritual battle must follow. If darkness is to win, as it does in the tragic process, then certain forces of light must first be vanquished. And we are shown this taking place. Superb psychology of Shakespeare, and entirely accurate theologically. Because evil damages the human soul, of course. Evil hurts, first, the theologians say, evil hurts first the Almighty God, secondly the self, and only third the neighbour. So, but for a modern man, if there's no hurt to anybody else, then there's no sin. We have already said that Hamlet's saving course in Shakespeare's view would have been fidelity to his own soul. And as Hamlet knows this, the downward journey is very difficult. It's difficult for him to destroy the goodness in him. To proceed by calmly ignoring his ideal is impossible. It puts up resistance, and it has to be cast out. Nor is this all, he must also betray love, which is why he has to betray crush Ophelia. And so on. Then Othello. I'd give Iago, there's a second temptation also from Iago. There are two long temptation scenes in Othello. And I did give my way for handkerchief. Iago invents an incident which just tips Othello over. He just goes crazy. Othello, oh, the pity of it, Iago. He thinks Iago is his friend. Oh, the pity of it, Iago. Because there's so much love, and he has to crush it in order to succeed in killing Desdemona. He then murders Desdemona, 7, 8, and he realizes what he's done. Wash me in steep down gulfs of liquid fire. Superb speech again, death speech of Othello. And then Othello finishes by stabbing himself. Hamlet. The prince, he's a prince, a noble prince, but he's melancholic. And he's vulnerable because he's melancholic. His father's ghost the father's ghost is ambiguous, but Shakespeare establishes that the father's ghost is partly guilty. And when the cock crows, the ghost starts like a guilty thing. The ghost reacts that he reacts like a guilty thing, which suggests that the ghost is bad. In which case, Hamlet shouldn't be following him. If Hamlet's a true believer, he shouldn't be following his ghost. Thereby hangs the tale. The ghost explains to Hamlet, revenge, most foul, revenge, you got to revenge, most foul murder. The king explains, the ghost of the king explains how he was sleeping in the garden, and along came his brother and poured poison in his ear, and that was the end of him. And he died without being able to go to confession, unhoused, disappointed, unannealed. So he died in his sins, which again suggests guilt. And Hamlet's reaction he forms, I'll wipe out all trivial fond records. He's going to, anything in his sight, anything he's thinking of, he's going to wipe out all trivial fond records, which includes Ophelia. All thoughts of love and memories of love, he's going to wipe out in order to be able to take revenge. Love has got to be dethroned before hate can be enthroned. So, I'll wipe out all trivial fond records. That is an important speech. Where is it? It's Hamlet's immediate reaction to the temptation, to the ghost. Where are we? Act 1. Oh, all you host of heaven. The ghost goes after explaining everything, and here's Hamlet's reaction. Oh, all you host of heaven. Oh, earth, where else? What else? And shall I couple hell? Oh, fire, hold my heart. And you, my sinews, grow not instant old, but bear me stiffly up. Remember thee, I, thou poor ghost, while memory holds a seat in this distracted globe. Remember thee, yea, from the table of my memory I'll wipe away all trivial fond records, all swords and books, all forms, all precious past, that youth and observation copied there, everything is, all his studies, forget it. Rot. I'm sorry, what's this? No, that's not the commandment, excuse me. And that commandment all alone shall live within the book and volume of my brain, unmixed with air and matter. Yes, by heaven. Yea, O most pernicious woman. He's now blasting his mother because he's realized what's happened. That's against the fourth commandment. O most pernicious woman, O villain, villain, smiling, damned villain. That's his uncle. My tables, meat it is that I set it down, that one may smile and be a villain. At least I'm sure it may be so in Denmark. So he's clearly reacting absolutely where the ghost was. And it's absolutely towards vengeance, and it's absolutely away from trivial wrong records. It's all very bad sign. But modernly, one will take it that Hamlet is being a good son and a good member of the state of Denmark. He's going to set things right in the state of Denmark. It's very, very balanced between the Middle Ages and the modern age. So, I'll write back to from records. 5 of Hamlet. Mousetrap. The Mousetrap is the name of the play. Now could I drink hot blood? And immediately after the play, Hamlet has a terrible speech. Now he sees, he's got the proof he wanted of his uncle's guilt. And therefore now he is going to proceed with vengeance. Where are we? 3. He's just spurned he's just spoken the famous soliloquy to be or not to be. He's spurned or he's crushed for a fever. He instructs the players, they put on the play. The king cries out for light, thus proving his guilt. And afterwards, Hamlet says, "'Tis now the very witching time of night, when churchyards yawn and hell itself breathes out contagion to this world. Now would I drink hot blood and do such bitter business as the day would quake to look on. Soft now to my mother, O heart," and so he's going to see his mother, and he will speak daggers to her to try to straighten her out. Then he has a chance, second conflict, he has a chance of killing his uncle, but he wants his uncle's soul to be damned as black as hell. Finally, then he commits an act of darkness, the killing of Polonius. And then he realizes at the end, whenever practically everybody is dead, or dying, or dead, he asks Horatio, "Draw thy breath in pain." I've already read that one, and tell the world what really happened. And then the audience is entirely with Hamlet normally, entirely with him. He's being oppressed by the society. Shakespeare's made the uncle not look all that good. Not all bad, but not all that good either, certainly not all that good. His mother is too weak to have stayed away from the uncle. She's not good. Laertes is wild and just breathing revenge. Hamlet cuts a good figure. Draw thy breath in pain, the rest is silence. And to make sure we get the message, Horatio says, "Good night, sweet prince, and flights of angels sing thee to thy rest." So, the last 2 are how the same process gets interrupted by a wise man, a wise elder, who knows how to interject mercy and forgiveness into this process. No longer, never forgive, never forget. You know who that is. Never forgive, never forget. That's the principle of remember the Holocaust. Never forgive, never forget. That's Talmudic reaction. The Christian reaction is forgive and forget. Prince Angelo is the Duke of Vienna has been a bit loose. He's been Duke. He's a good man, undoubtedly, but he's been too lax in applying the law, and Vienna's a bit out of control. So the Duke of Vienna is going to leave his puritanical sidekick, number 2, Angelo, in charge. Prince Angelo. Prince Angelo is absolutely perfect. A Puritan. Puritanically perfect. And the Duke, one of the Duke's motives for leaving him in command is in case he gets to learn who he really is. Isabella is so Angelo is in command, Angelo decides to enforce the law against fornication. Claudio has put Julia in the family way. Claudio has got to be executed. Claudio is in prison awaiting execution. He has a sister, Isabella, who's about to enter the convent. Isabella is perfect, a future nun, just so perfect. So Isabella comes to plead with Angelo for her brother's life. So here she comes, she's beautiful, and she's very perfect. And here's Angelo, absolutely puritanical and absolutely perfect. You know what happens. Isabella is a saint, as bait to catch a saint. So by the end of the first conversation between Isabella and Angelo is rocking with love, with sensuality, with temptation, as men can rock. And then he asked himself, again, a great soliloquy, have I been sent a saint to catch me a saint? And the answer was yes. It's a saint. A prostitute would never tempt Angelo, but a saint can tempt him. So he says, my dear, come back tomorrow. He listens to what she has to say to defend her brother. And then he says, honey, come back tomorrow. And then he's left for, there's a soliloquy, is this her fault or mine? Ever till now, when men were fond, I smiled and wondered how. Up till now, in my puritanical, very correct and proper life, whenever men fell in love, I thought, how foolish, what a foolish thing. Now, I begin to see. Ever till now, when men were fond, I smiled in a superior way, and I wondered how. I couldn't understand how. Now I understand. He's beginning to learn what it is to be human. 5. Isabella comes back, and there's a second dialogue, and it acts as a second temptation. Isabella is absolutely not meaning to tempt him. But this time Angelo crashes. I give my sensual race the rein. I let my sensuality go, and he propositions her in the most direct and open way. And she says, never, never, never. This is your brother. I don't care about my brother. Forget my brother. My chastity is everything. So, the result is that Angelo sleeps or commits the sin of the flesh with a woman who he thinks is Isabella. But the Duke of Vienna has come back in disguise, and the Duke of Vienna has fixed up to replace Isabella, but to make Angelo think it is Isabella in the dark. He's fixed up Angelo's girlfriend, previous girlfriend. So he in fact sins with his girlfriend instead of with Isabella. But he proceeds with the execution of Claudio, even though he thinks that Isabella has given herself to him, which was her part of the bargain. He still insists on executing Claudio, which is treachery. But again, the Duke has intervened so that Claudio is somebody else substitutes for Claudio, a condemned criminal substitute for Claudio. So again, the intention of Angelo to sin very seriously is there, but the sin is avoided because the Duke has slipped something in instead. And then at the end of the play, everything is sorted out by the wisdom of the Duke. So the wisdom of the Duke is to get Angelo, number 8, to admit that he sinned, which he does, which is quite something for a Puritan, to admit that he's guilty. I crave death, says Antonio. Excellent, says the Duke, just what I wanted. Now go and marry your girlfriend. He won't be excused. He has got to marry his girlfriend. She has a marvelous word. She says, the best of men have faults, she says, and it's better that way. It's better if they're not all perfect. That's Shakespearean wisdom. I should find that. It's too precious not to find. Hold on. There's so much wisdom. There's a lot of wisdom in it. It's not logical, but it is human and it is wise. So I've got to find Measure of Leisure. Just a moment. It's a great play, and it's the play immediately after Hamlet. In other words, it's the play in which Shakespeare finds the answer to the problem that wasn't solved in Hamlet. And the answer is mercy. Christian mercy in the place of Talmudic vengeance. Measure, here we are, Act 5. Hold on, I'll find it. I'll find it eventually. The best of men have faults. Do you still have conflicts? Mariana, I think is her name. Oh, that's actually an example. And he asked the girlfriend, "Are you willing to take Angela as your husband?" And she said, "Yes, I will. I still love him. He's a beast, but I love him." That's the sense. I've got to find this out. They say best men are moulded out of faults and, for the most, become much more the better for being a little bad. The best men are moulded out of faults and become the better for being a little bad. Become much more the better for being a little bad. It's not logical, but it's clear to see what she means. Puritans are logical, and they're inhuman. So, humanity doesn't always need logicality or kultur. So, everything is sorted out. There's a betrothal to marry. He's betrothed to marry Uncle, that's her name, because she is willing to accept it. So the marriage bells ring out, and then the Duke marries Isabella, and Claudia marries Julia. It's just marriage bells all the way. So it's a happy ending, because the Duke was wise enough to interrupt what would otherwise have been the same tragic machine rolling to its inexorable conclusion. Finally, the Tempest, the same thing. Prospero is Duke, I think. He's enlightened. He's got a virtue. His enemies are at his mercy because they've been shipwrecked, and they land on the island where Prospero is the king. He's in command. And so his enemies are at his mercy. He spares them thanks to his cherubim, Miranda, influenced, that's his daughter. His daughter, his symbol embodies the good in his soul. There you are, his daughters can, for goodness sakes, as wives can. Embodies the good in him, and because of her influence, he spares them. By himself, he could be very angry with his enemies. They are his enemies, he spares them. Prospero has triumphed over the temptation. Prospero's once more, the plot goes so that once more they're at his mercy. And he sides, again he overcomes the temptation, he sides with his reason against his fury. Act 5, Scene 1. And the act of night, instead of an act of darkness, it's an act of light. Prospero forgives his brother. All round the 8, there's reconciliation. And 5, at the end, is that Prospero retires in peace and quiet and happiness. Shakespeare retires after writing The Tempest. The Tempest was his last play. And then he retired, lived 5 more years in the countryside, but he maybe wrote something of Henry VIII, but basically that was the end of his career. Then you can see the pattern is clear from one play to another. And the pattern in King Lear is the only other really famous tragedy that's not there. King Lear commits an act of darkness right at the beginning of the play, and then you see finally it takes his daughter, the sacrifice of his daughter Cordelia to straighten things out. And that's again basically Christian, it's self-sacrifice. It's not a plea in favour of hate in place of love. For a moment, so to speak, Shakespeare has forgotten Christianity, and he's gone back from the New Testament to the Old Testament. So what is the answer to, is the modern problem insoluble? No, the problem, the solution is the old-fashioned faith. It's to go back to the Middle Ages. Turn to this page, the other side of the black and white page. And you've got the medieval solution, the riddle of Hamlet with its medieval solution. Literature is not holy scripture, and it should not be studied as though it were. Shakespeare is not a theologian, he is a dramatist. He is entitled to not be theologically accurate. However, famous works of literature repay study because if these works of literature have become famous, the reason is because they tell us about ourselves. Hamlet certainly tells the modern world again and again about itself. And people say, what is his problem? And much the best understanding of Hamlet is that Shakespeare was Catholic and Shakespeare was almost out of his mind by what England was doing to his beloved country was doing to the Catholic faith. The whole world is now in apostasy. The whole world, the system is out of joint. The world is out of joint, oh, cursed spite that ever I was born to set it right, says Hamlet. And cursed spite is all over, and all millions of people are, if there are millions of people, the modern world is a cursed spite that they cannot set right. Now, no literary work has been so studied as Shakespeare's play Hamlet, so ever since it was written, I got here in 1600, men must have sensed that it speaks to their condition. Yet the more they study the play's central character, Hamlet, the more varied and contradictory are their interpretations of him. Because Shakespeare himself was poised between the Middle-Age way of looking at things and the modern way of looking at things. He writes a medieval play, but it's got a completely new cast upon it. The rebel is a hero. Surely this is because Shakespeare, writing in England at the pivot of the turn of England from the medieval to the modern world, expressed in Hamlet more than any other of his plays the meeting and blending of these two contradictory worlds. Thus, the one play expresses simultaneously and continuously two quite opposite worldviews. No wonder the play swirls in contradiction. Thus, seen medievally, Hamlet falls in the course of the play from noble prince to bloodthirsty killer, central column and so on. Whereas seen modernly, he rises from society's victim to a triumphant avenger, the column on the right hand side. For Shakespeare to have conceded, as far as he does, to succeed, as far as he does, in blending two such opposites into one whole, he must himself have been deeply divided between the medieval and the modern world. At least briefly, he's modern. Basically, Shakespeare remained medieval. But that is the condition of millions of men in modern civilization, in Western civilization for the last 400 years. That is why Hamlet is uniquely puzzling and uniquely popular, and will likely remain so unless or until Western man finally succeeds in his efforts to wipe out the medieval worldview, which modern man is doing everything he can to do. The education is all twisted. The youngsters in the United States, the school janitors are forbidden to speak of God to the boys and girls in the school. Can you imagine? I heard that once. I'm sure it's true in many, many cases. The last question. How does the realistic Hamlet, how does the realistic Shakespeare, with such a grasp on people and the frame of things, how does he twist things so that Hamlet even begins to look good? It certainly does so. Answer the ghost. The ghost is the key to the play. And so look at the column on the left of the same side. The action of the play Hamlet is started by the ghost of Hamlet's murdered father appearing on the battlements of Williamson Castle to stir up his son to take revenge. Now, is this ghost a good ghost or a bad ghost? He cannot be both, because having foul crimes to be burnt and purged away, either he is from purgatory and it is good, or he is from hell and he is evil. Does this ghost come from purgatory or from hell? What would theology say? What would Catholic theology say? From hell. If If he comes from hell, what's the consequence?
Exactly what's happened with Hamlet. Exactly what's happened with Hamlet.
That's it, yes. But for Hamlet to be made to look good, then what must Shakespeare do with the ghost?
He's appearing in the light as a ghost.
He's got to make him look good.
Yeah.
That's what he does.
Yeah.
Would God ever allow a soul out of purgatory? Can a soul get out of purgatory without God's permission?
No.
We Catholics. Anton? No.
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not, correct. Souls do come out of purgatory. Why do they come out of purgatory? They are allowed on some occasion by God out of purgatory. Why?
Warn us.
To warn us, yes. Yes. To warn us and to spur us on to good. Could God possibly allow a soul out of purgatory in order to spur somebody to pursue vengeance? Not possible. Therefore, Shakespeare has built the play. The play rests on a fabrication. The play is twisted from the start.
Is the ghost a figment of his imagination?
Oh no. No, the ghost...
Ever admit to crime himself?
Does the ghost admit his crime to himself?
No, does Hamlet's uncle ever admit his crime?
In what he says he says that the ghost says, where have I got it? I've got foul. He starts like the ghost says he's in purging serious sins.
But the proof for the ghost's existence is Hamlet's uncle's reaction to the play. Is that the only proof the uncle gives? Because that's an ambiguous...
No, the play, the master, Hamlet sets up the play to confirm what the ghost told him.
Is that a very good confirmation though? He could have been reacting to anything.
The king's reaction is very violent. We're speaking about things that Shakespeare... We're speaking about how Shakespeare presents things, because this is his play. Shakespeare makes the king react very violently. Almost, I think, as soon as the poison is poured in, the king gets up and lights.
And that's enough proof.
For Hamlet, it's enough proof. It's the confirmation. Yes.
But if he's already forced to believe, then he doesn't need much confidence. It's not exact proof. The uncle never really admits that he killed.
It's enough proof. For Hamlet, it's enough proof. On top of the ghost.
But if he's already mad, and that's just kind of...
The ghost is already certainly kind of... The first temptation is the ghost. The second temptation is the confirmation by the play. That's all reasonable. But what is twisted, objectively, against Catholic doctrine, against therefore reality, where Shakespeare has departed from reality, is at the very beginning by making the ghost, who push him to vengeance, still look good. He can only look good if he comes from purgatory. He can only come from hell if he's stirring up the vengeance.
Hence why I thought it might be a bit of a figment of his imagination. He's projecting it.
No. The other two saw the ghost as well.
Ah, yes.
The play opens with two of the soldiers on the battlefield saying, have you seen him again yet tonight? Brilliant start. No, I haven't seen him. We saw him last night, we haven't seen him tonight. And then we've told Hamlet to come along. Hamlet comes along and the ghost appears again. And the two of them don't want Hamlet to go away with the ghost because something bad might happen, but Hamlet says, let me alone, I'm going to talk to the ghost. He goes off to talk to him and the ghost tells the whole story. And includes the fact that he's got to purge considerable crimes. Well, no, let me see if I can find the actual quote. The actual quote, of course, is very important. I am thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night, and for the day confined to fast in fires, till the foul crimes done in my days of nature are burnt and purged away. That's the language of purgatory. Because in hell there's no purging away. But that I am forbid to tell the secrets of my prison house, I could a tale unfold whose lightest word would harrow up thy soul, freeze thy young blood, make thy two eyes like stars, start from their spheres, thy knotted and combining looks locks depart, and each particular hair to stand on end, like quills upon the fretful porcupine. And so on. And there's a there he's saying, yes. And then he tells the story, and then he says, Hamlet, you better avenge this. And Hamlet then says, oh, all who heaven and earth, what else shall I couple hell? So, see what he says. The action play is started by the ghost of Hamlet. Now, is this ghost a good ghost or bad ghost? He can be both. Because the father's ghost, having foul crimes to be burnt to purge away, either is from purgatory and is proud good, or is from hell and is evil. If he's from hell and is evil, then what he proposes to Hamlet is diabolical, and Hamlet cannot be noble or worthy of praise for putting it into action. But by the end of the play, Shakespeare would have flights of angels sing the sweet prince to his rest, presumably for having cleaned out what was rotten in the state of Denmark. So Hamlet must be right to have heeded the ghost, who must then be a good ghost and must have come from purgatory, as his opening line suggested. But in that case, how can he be driving Hamlet to bloody thoughts and deeds of vengeance? The real Lord of heaven, of hell and purgatory, says, revenge is mine and I will repay. And no soul in his grace, like souls in purgatory, would dream of preempting that revenge. They would never ask to get out of purgatory, to stir to revenge. So Shakespeare is twisting Catholic reality, or what Catholics know to be the reality. And it's by that twisting that he succeeds in making a bad guy look like a good guy. And so the problem is insoluble, the modern problem is insoluble, because people who are objectively bad guys look to themselves and to everybody else like good guys. So, therefore, Shakespeare himself makes his ghost too good to come from hell and too bad to come from purgatory. Therefore, the ghost may be superb theatre, but he comes from nowhere real. He comes from contradiction, and he fills the play full of contradiction. Alas for moderns. The medieval worldview is real, the modern worldview is always more or less of a departure from reality. Ergo, you and I have got to be Catholics.